Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. Obviously, a very important night here, and I think a night, as I remember with elections, is with as many open questions as answers, and I think the analysis is going to be going well beyond here tomorrow as to what happened and why. We were joined before here by David Pollak and Andrew Whitman. I want to also bring in the balance of our panel this segment. Dominic Carter here, familiar guest here, among other things, political correspondent, but also an author as well. And we're also very pleased to be joined by Elizabeth Holtzman, former New York Congresswoman, who's kind enough to join us. All right, I'd like to talk about demographics this segment, and so much of it has been fractured on Black, Latino, yes, I looked at you, Dominic, for that, Black, Latino, gender, and then even broke down by faith, et cetera. We can go up and down the line here. On the female vote, we weren't really talking about social issues till all of a sudden a couple comments came up in a couple Senate races in Missouri, and it just kind of opened up the floodgates. If we could play those clips here from Mr. Murdoch and Mr. Aiken, let's take a listen.
I came to realize life is that gift from God, and I think even when life begins in that horrible situation of rape, that it is something that God intended to happen.
That, of course, Mr. Murdoch here, putting no exceptions as it relates to rape, including even in the situation, and he also wanted to say there was a gift from God. Mr. Aiken, he, if possible, even made a more bizarre comment here, talking about something that science, obviously, no one thinks is accurate. Take a listen to this comment from Todd Aiken.
If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
No, it doesn't. But anyway, that created a firestorm, immediately condemned by Mitt Romney, both Republican candidates in Senate races. But all of a sudden, social issues came to the fore. Reproductive rights, which was kind of quiet, Congresswoman, all of a sudden came alive again. How much do you think those comments, the Republican platform that we saw in Tampa, may have changed some minds of the female electorate that had economics as issue 1, 2, and 3 in jobs that might have said, hold on a second, this next person might pick the next Supreme Court nominee, I'm going to reconsider?
Oh, I think it's had a big impact, because I think what it's done is derailed a lot of people who might have been attracted by Mitt Romney and said, well, you know, Obama hasn't done such a great job, let's look to an alternative. But when they look at Mitt Romney and see what he's brought in his wake, not only what he himself has said, abolish Planned Parenthood, but Paul Ryan is his vice presidential nominee who's opposed abortion in all circumstances. Now he's changed his mind. And then to see the Republican Party with candidates who espouse such nonsense, such ignorance, and such anti-women garbage, I think a lot of women are saying, wait a minute. I mean, I'm a woman and I count. I have dignity as a human being, and I'm not going to let some Ayatollah, some guy who thinks he's going to control me, make decisions about myself. And so I think it has hurt Romney. How much it's hurt Romney, we'll know after tonight, but I think it's definitely a factor. And I think not only women, but I think some men are outraged by this as well. This is, and also it's an economic thing. If women can't control family planning, then they can't control necessarily their economic well-being, how they're going to raise their family, and all those issues. There are so many issues involved in that. We thought that the whole issue of contraception had been decided a long time ago, 1968, with the Supreme Court saying that women had the right to use contraception. Wait a minute, now people in the Republican Party are advocating abolishing that. I think people just said, wait a minute. This is not what America stands for in the 21st century. How much do you think
it went beyond the borders of those two Senate races? Because obviously both of those guys were winning, were ahead by decent margins going into those debates, and then overnight they were down either double digits or close to it, and both are expected to lose tonight as a consequence of those comments. To Romney's credit, he immediately condemned Aiken's comments. He didn't demand that the ad got pulled down from Murdoch. He didn't agree with the comments, but he didn't exactly run to the hills from them. Is it really going to affect him here with the electorate, whether it be for turnout or that women that were on the fence now going the other way?
I think so. I mean, how much it'll affect it, I don't know. I think it'll affect many women, and I think it'll affect some men who are also outraged about this as well.
Also, we always talked about, remember soccer moms was how they got labeled here, and the suburban housewife that was going to, that was the electorate that you had to keep that could go either way. They're calling them waitress moms this year. People who have to work more than one job here, single moms trying to put food on the table. In terms of that portion of the electorate, it seems when you look at the data, and we're going to bring up some of the numbers here right now, that obviously they typically break Democrat, but that portion of the female electorate really seems to be maybe the swing vote here tonight.
Well, it could be the swing vote. These attitudes by the Republican Party going way, way backwards, I think has hurt the party, has hurt everyone associated with it. Does that mean every Republican's going to lose? Definitely not. But I think it will hurt it will hurt Mitt Romney. It will hurt the Republican Party, not just in this election, but in the future. And it should. They have to treat women with respect.
And let me pivot now to the black vote, Dominic. And a lot of people said, you know what, the enthusiasm there 4 years ago isn't there this time. But when you look at the turnout numbers in inner cities across, I mean, we're looking in Ohio today, in Cincinnati, in Cleveland, in Columbus, and in other cities, in other, major states here that are in play. There were a lot of people of color online here, and they've been voting early, and they say that the reverse intention of crunching down 13 days to 8 days in terms of when you could do early voting here, or trying to shut down the time that you could do it, or it got people talking about things like poll tax. It seemed to enthuse that electorate was, they were going to vote for the president no matter what, but they wouldn't have turned out in the numbers they would have otherwise. You buy that?
Definitely. The African-American vote in this election was a sleeping giant. And the Republican Party, with their efforts to curtail voting hours, the amount of time for early voting, it seems that they really piss people off. And so, we talked about this, Andrew, you and I, night after night, whether or not there'll be serious enthusiasm this time around for President Obama. And I consistently said no. But what happened was you have people that feel around the country, especially in these key battleground states, that feel you're trying to take their voting right away from them. And so thus, as a result of this, you now have a repeat. I don't know if the numbers will match the same, but a repeat of 2008 where they're willing to stand online for 4 and 5 hours. The Republican Party, or Mitt Romney, has a big problem. You asked why was he in Pennsylvania today? That's why. Because when you have people standing online for hours to vote, the Democratic base that doesn't traditionally turn out to vote, somehow you've got to overcome that. And that's why he was in Pennsylvania today.
David, we all heard, my gosh, look at what the youth did in 2008. They turned out in huge numbers. You were a part of that. But people said, hey, you're not getting them out of the dorms room this year. What's reality and what's rhetoric in terms of the youth vote? Because the enthusiasm, or at least the energy and the history, wasn't going to be there 4 years later. They're worried about getting jobs when they graduate from college like everybody else, and also the people in the young 20s know the economic realities well. You know more than the anecdotes. What is it?
Well, I would say we don't have to speculate on any of these matters, because when you look at the job approval rating of President Obama, which is under 50%, all throughout political history, under 50% for an incumbent means that you're in danger and you are ripe for being able to be taken out by an incumbent, by a challenger. The fact that they have not been able to, that we're still at this late date saying, boy, is Romney going to be able to do it? Maybe he's not, tells you that whether it's women, whether it's a motivated African-American base, or whether it's youth, that turnout is still coming to support the president, because otherwise he'd have no shot given the right track, wrong track numbers and given his job approval ratings. So this is a motivated, activated Democratic base and progressive base. And I must say that should Romney lose tonight, I think the Republican Party has, I know Treasurer Murdoch. He's a wacko. I'm not afraid to say it. He is a wacko. And they're going to have to go back and say, what are we doing wrong as a party? Well, how do we allow this extremist element to really define so much of where we are, what we say, and what we do, that doesn't allow us, even in this election, to be able to take out an incumbent president who is presiding over an economy that's been struggling for, well, since before he got there.
One thing, I don't know how you define as an electorate, Andrew, is anecdotally, I don't know anybody who voted for a Republican 4 years ago who's now voting for Obama. I know a lot of folks here who are voting the other way. And there certainly seems, as a changing demographic in this country, more of a base and more of a demographics to pull from Democrats. But the white vote here is going to be so huge, I think, white male vote at least, for Romney. I don't know what it's going to send at the end of the day, but I think it's a sad testament, whoever wins, what they're going to walk into. Because the next 4 years is going to be like this.
It points to a polarized electorate, but you have to give Team Chicago credit. They were not stupid when they were registering all these people to vote. They knew what these numbers, they were able to predict what they were going to be. And thus you're able to counteract, Richard, exactly what's happening. So I'm telling you, I still believe President Obama is going to win this thing. For a while after debate number 1, I thought he was in real trouble. But he got the momentum back, and after Sandy, he appeared presidential. But to the Congresswoman, what I'm a bit confused about is, for all that you said about Romney, what I find interesting is that he still closed the gender gap. Historically, Democrats do well with women, but Romney still was able to close it. That's what I found interesting.
Well, we'll see what happens tonight. There might have been some shift. Remember, Obama has a problem in terms of his economic performance. It's right out there. So the question is, why are people going to vote for him? They're going to vote for him not necessarily because they're attracted by him, but because they're repelled by what the Republicans are doing. And so women are going to say, yeah, you want to get me a job, but you don't consider me enough of a human being so I can decide when I'm going to have a baby and when I'm not? That's not for me. Or African American, oh, you don't think I'm entitled to vote? I don't care about whether Obama's going to be elected. I don't want you in there. So I think what's happened here is that this, what I consider to be the Republicans picking off and attacking various segments of the population, whether it's women, we're going to have a war on women, or whether it's minorities, we're going to stop minorities from voting. And I've been involved in seeing some of this stuff around the country, which is really ugly. That's not what America really is about, and I don't think that's what people wanted to vote about in this election. But it's turned into that.
I think a year ago, if you said the candidate that supports gay marriage full-throatedly and said, I'm completely behind it, that's a net positive with the electorate, you would have said they were crazy. So whether Biden stepped in it or whatever the real reason was, you got actually, that's a political winner. Who would have thought? Okay, we're going to jump to a quick break here. When we come back here, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that's been happening at the polls. And I don't think, maybe I'm naive, it's a Republican-Democrat thing. I just don't think it's a good thing here with some of the stuff to make it harder for people to vote here that is so patently about political gain. And I think that we're going to be talking about this quite a bit in the coming days. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.